Hi, my name is Kitty Fapp, and I'm a friend of Emma Miller's, and I've been asked to do a story about Kansas. And I'm going to tell the story about Frederick Remington, who happened to be an artist and sketch artist, a very famous one, and a saloon owner. It was 1883 in the spring when the rolling hills of Kansas were blossoming and glorious. And here comes Frederick Remington, getting off the train in Peabody, Kansas, right there in Merriam County, Kansas. And he says, this has got to be the best thing in the world. He says, I've spent part of my dad's $10,584 to look for a cattle ranch in Montana, and I found out it's too darn expensive. But my friend Bob Camp said, hey, come on down to Kansas. He says, I bet you I can find you some land. And sure enough, he found 160 acres of land, a three-room frame house with a corral, 2 barns, and a watering hole and a creek, and all the things and amenities anybody could have, except for one thing. He didn't have any horses. He didn't have anything. He said, but I came to Kansas because I wanted to have a sheep ranch. At least it's a lot cheaper than doing cattle. So he and Bob, and of course Bob lived on the county line, and so his property and Frederick's property adjoined each other. One was in Merriam County and one was in Butler County. But that didn't make any difference. They were still good friends. Because do you know that Frederick Remington went to school at Yale for a whole year and a half? He went to art school, but then his dad died and he had to go back home. But that's part of the story anyway. So, do you know that on that farm, he just took it like a jackrabbit running. He sure did. He bought almost 50 horses, and then he found this beautiful mare. It was a maple, dusty color, yellow kind of, with his mane and his tail, and he called him Terracotta. That horse, oh, he loved that horse. Frederick Remington thought that was the coolest horse in the whole world. And of course, Frederick Remington decided that he had to get some sheep. So he and Bob Camp found some sheep, and they put them on the property. And then old Fred, he decided, I need somebody to help me with this. So he found this guy. His name was Kerr, K-E-H-R, and he did the grunge work. He had to do all the stuff. But now Frederick, he thought, this isn't so bad. I can go off and sketch while old Kerr does all the tending to the sheep and all that kind of stuff. And he says, this is the life. But that didn't last very long. I'm telling you, by the summer of 1883, he was getting restless. So he hired one of the neighbor boys, and he says, all right, I've got Kerr doing all the other stuff, but I need somebody to go out into the field and watch my cattle and bring your dog so you can go be a good sheep herder. And the little kid says, sure, I'll do it. He says, what do I get out of it? And he goes, oh, we'll give you some grub and whatever you need. And so the story goes that Frederick Remington got on his horse Terracotta and he went west. Just about as far as New Mexico, as they say. But he didn't stay very long because 2 weeks later he's back. But old Frederick Remington, he became restless even more. He says, I gotta go do some more stuff. And so he would, for hours and days on end, he would sit on the fence post and he would sketch. And he'd do it on brown paper. One day he even took a knife and sketched a cowboy roping a horse on a barn door. He wasn't as good as he was a few years later, but that was just the beginning of his artwork. And then on Christmas Eve in 1883, now mind you, this is less than a year, he decided, and 4 of his buddies decided to go over to the schoolhouse to see the Christmas pageant and all the things that they were doing and the stories and singing. Well, the 5 of them were restless and noisy, and they were asked to leave because they were throwing paper wads. And when the little girl got up to sing "When the Baby Hangs the Stocking," that just nearly did everybody in. They said, you guys go out. Shoot. Well, Not more than a few minutes later, there's flames burning up all on the outside of that building, and the 2 doors pushed open, and Bob Camp and Frederick and all his buddies were yelling, "Fire! Fire! Fire!" Well, it was a prank. They had gotten tumbleweed, and they scared the living daylights out of everybody. And do you know what happened? They got arrested, all 5 of them. He says, "All right, that's it, I'm done. I'm going to sell off my ranch." And he sold his cattle, his sheep ranch, and he just thought, "All right, now's the time. I'll go back and I will marry my girlfriend." Oh, Eva Adele Canton, she was so pretty and he missed her so much. So on October 1st of that year, he and her got married. Unfortunately, she could not stand Kansas. So he set her off back to New York, and he went back and he went to Kansas City for a while. And he sketched wherever he went. He didn't care what he sketched. He would stand on a street corner and watch people, and the next thing you knew, here comes this beautiful drawing. Might have been pencil, it might have been made charcoal. Sometimes he did watercolors. But that was the beginning. But while he was in Kansas City, one of his friends, an acquaintance by the name of W.C. Finley, he just said, "You know what? You should become a professional artist." And doggone it, that's exactly what he did. But he finally ended up going back to New York, being with Eva, and they lived in New York City. And that was lovely, and he sold so many sketches. And 4 months after they moved back to New York City, he had a picture of his cowboy roping a steer on the cover of Harper's Weekly magazine. Now, if that doesn't call interesting, that is really cool for somebody that time. But Frederick never went back west again, but in a time of his life, he sketched more than 3,000 sketches. He did paintings, he did sculptures, and of course one of his most famous ones is the bucking bronco. And of course he did a lot of watercolors. In 1909, the day after Christmas, he had an attack of appendicitis. He was 48 years old, and he died. But Frederick Remington will be remembered as being one of the greatest Western artists that ever was. Just like that Montana artist, Charles Russell. And the rest is art history.